Hey everyone, and welcome to our first real video talking about user experience. The last one was just a real quick introduction, and now we actually get to begin analyzing some of these user experience decisions made by various companies that we have the opportunity to analyze a little bit more deeply now. So you have to imagine to a certain degree the pitch that was involved when these logos were presented to these various companies and how their logo is really their foundation for the rest of their design decisions. So very commonly you're going to see the typeface they chose to represent in their logo used in other areas as well. For instance, mostly their headlines involved in their advertising or in their store retail location. They might have signage that uses the very same typeface that they chose to use for their logo. So it's interesting to just look at their frontmost exposure to the general public, and that's usually found in their logo itself. So I just found a bunch of various examples trying to kind of look at various different industries and seeing what they're attempting to communicate through their choice of type. So FedEx is one of the favorite examples that get brought up by designers when we're looking at logos because there's multiple things going on here. For instance, their typeface choice, of course, is a sans serif. It's very modern, right? Not a whole lot of variation in stroke width. So it's attempting to communicate in that respect solidity. This is definitely a bold typeface. So it's solid, it's heavy, it's there, and it's not going anywhere, which is what we want in a company that is short for Federal Express. We want something that isn't going to go away anytime soon, that's going to be there for us through all of our trials and tribulations. Another little hidden bit, and this is why this is such a popular logo to get brought up in conversations like this, is sneaking in additional hints at the user experience, at communicating a message to the end user. And that is the arrow that's found in between the E and the X. It's not something that you notice right off the bat sometimes. However, once you notice it, you can't look away from it because it's such a powerful image in and of itself, and it's all brought together just by the way they were combining type. So that arrow helps communicate motion, that they're always heading to the next place they need to be. So FedEx is one of those examples, this particular logo, of just really thoughtfully thinking about the user experience behind their type choice, how much of a message is being communicated, and how positive of a message that is for a company. I mean, if I'm shipping something, I want to know that they're always moving forward, that they're always moving my package to where it needs to go, or vice versa, always getting my package to me on time and are extremely reliable. And their type choice in this circumstance communicates all of those in like just about as clear of an example as you can possibly get. So I have a couple of more retail options for us to look at. And these are kind of interesting to me because this is one of those solidities that Helvetica is super popular in our current culture, basically, almost worldwide, just because it is such a neutral typeface. So that's what Staples' logo is built in, as well as their tagline there, that was easy, quote unquote. That's all being communicated using Helvetica. You can't get much more of a neutral typeface than that. I mean, there's a lot that have attempted to get close to what Helvetica is attempting to communicate. For instance, Arial is practically a complete derivative of Helvetica. If you look at Arial, there are a couple of distinctions that are going to separate it. But for the most part, neutral typefaces like that have grown so much in popularity. And it's because they're can be perceived by different groups of people as something they can relate to. So that was Staples. Looking at Target, they do the exact same thing. Very neutral, very Helvetica typeface. It's open to interpretation. It's easily accessible to multiple states of mind. So if you're a company that has a very wide target market that isn't necessarily being specific to one group of people, that can be interpreted in multiple different ways. And long story short, Target's trying to make as much money as they can, right? Along with just about any of these corporations we're going to be looking at. They are just attempting to send forth the message that's going to be the most profitable for them. That's the end result that they're searching for. And these neutral typefaces, particularly Helvetica, just because it's so strong in popularity in our current state of history in design, that it's doing just that. It's increasing their access to multiple groups of people, therefore increasing their revenue. Now, Walgreens is one of those companies in retail that has gone a little bit of a different path. They haven't done much to update their logo since their creation, and it has that kind of classical, free-flowing, easygoing feel. It's definitely a script typeface, and this particular one isn't that fancy. There's a little bit of customization to it with that W where it looks, it has that old-fashioned, old-timey feel to it, but at the same time, it's also not necessarily a neat and perfect script typeface. There are instances in it where it could be more perfect, but they didn't want it to be. They wanted it to kind of have that easygoing feel, and their new tagline is a perfect representation of that. At the corner of happy and healthy, just something super easygoing, especially with our typeface choice for that as well. I mean, that's definitely a typeface that's attempting to look handwritten. It's definitely a graphic typeface. It's trying to come off as if someone just went up there with like a Sharpie and wrote this in. So it communicates their overall message of being a happy and healthy place to be, a place that's easygoing yet puts health at their frontmost concern as a company. So they're kind of interesting to look at in that regard. So that was all about retail space. And as we saw for the most part, most of those logos were very much neutral in their dynamic. They wanted to be as openly interpreted as possible, as reaching as many people as they possibly could, with the exception of Walgreens kind of sticking to their guns on just being like this happy, easygoing company. Now, looking at a completely different side of things, we're looking at Nike's logo choice. And through this, we're also going to look at a couple other examples of basically sporting companies in general. You're going to notice they love using these italic, slightly skewed fonts. And really just because it has that complete sense of motion. I mean, this is Nike's logo. Reebok does the same thing. They have a little bit more of kind of this edgy geographic thing going on as well, just kind of communicating top edge of science, this sharp, clear-cut dynamic of you want to be able to cut while you're playing basketball really well, this is the shoe for you. Type feeling, it has that dynamic, it has that energy going for it. Same with speedo, slightly skewed. They have actually a little bit of a different thing going for them, just in the fact that this is a very modern looking typeface. For instance, it looks like the P and the D are basically just flipped. That's something that has been coming up a lot in more modern times. Typically type founders through history have wanted to make each character a little bit more distinct in their own right. However, in more modern times, and when I say modern times, I mean like the 20s to now, um, these a little bit more of structurally built typefaces, I guess would be a good way to put it, as in they're almost made from a template to a certain degree. When you have the opportunity to make the D and the O look as similar as possible, they'll take that, as a stylistic choice. So it has that modern sense to it. Also, again, with the dynamic of speed, with the dynamic of movement, these sporting companies want to communicate that because it's all about movement for them. That is what they're attempting to give off as their user experience. That if you buy this product, you're going to move faster. That's the end result. So their logos and their choice of type 100% communicate that same thing.